The year was 1738, in the colony of South Carolina. The morning sun rose over endless cotton fields, but for the enslaved people working beneath it, sunlight meant nothing. Every sunrise only marked another day of chains, pain, and impossible labor. Among them was a 16-year-old girl named Sarah. She had never known freedom. She had never known what it felt like to wake up without fear.
And carried them home.
She had never called anything her own. Not her clothes, not her tiny wooden cabin, not even her own name. The plantation owner often called her, girl, as though she wasn't a human being. Yet inside Sarah lived something that no whip could ever destroy. Hope. Every night, after the overseers disappeared, Sarah's grandmother gathered the children around a tiny candle.
Every name.
She whispered stories about
I carry
Africa.
them in my hand.
She described rivers that sparkled like diamonds. She spoke of kings and queens, musicians, dancers, and villages where people laughed without fear. Never forget, grandmother whispered, our history did not begin in slavery. Those words became Sarah's treasure. Years passed. Sarah became one of the strongest workers on the plantation. She picked cotton from sunrise until darkness. Her hands bled. Her back ached. Still, she never stopped smiling at the younger children. She secretly taught them songs that carried hidden meanings. Songs about rivers. Songs about stars. Songs about freedom. One evening an elderly man named Elijah quietly approached her. There are people escaping north, he whispered. Sarah's heart raced. She had heard rumors before. Stories of brave people following the North Star. Stories of strangers helping enslaved families hide. Stories that sounded too impossible to believe. Elijah looked into her eyes. It is real. For weeks Sarah wrestled with the decision. Leaving meant risking death. Being caught meant brutal punishment. But staying meant a lifetime in chains. Then tragedy struck. Her grandmother became gravely ill. Before taking her final breath, she held Sarah's trembling hands. Promise me. Sarah leaned closer. Carry our story. Those became her grandmother's final words. That night Sarah made her choice. She would run, not only for herself, for everyone whose voices had been silenced. The escape began after midnight. The moon hid behind dark clouds. Sarah and 5 others slipped quietly into the forest. No one spoke. Every snapped branch sounded like thunder. Every distant bark of a dog froze their hearts. For days they survived on berries, roots, and rainwater. Sometimes they walked all night. Sometimes they hid inside hollow trees for entire days. One afternoon they heard horses. Slave catchers. The hunters were getting closer. The group scattered into different directions. Sarah sprinted through thick woods until she reached a swamp. Without hesitation she stepped into the freezing water. She remained perfectly still for hours, surrounded by insects, snakes, and mud. The horses eventually disappeared. She had survived. But now she was alone. Days turned into weeks. Her feet became covered in blisters. Her clothes were torn. Her body grew weaker. Still she continued following the North Star. One cold evening she noticed a small farmhouse. A white woman quietly opened the door. Neither of them spoke. The woman simply pointed toward the barn. Inside waited warm soup, dry clothes, a blanket. Before sunrise the woman handed Sarah a small piece of paper. It contained only one sentence. Trust the next light. Sarah didn't understand, but that night she followed a lantern hanging outside another farmhouse. Then another. Then another. Without realizing it, she had entered a secret network of courageous people risking everything to help enslaved families escape. Step by step, light by light, hope carried her forward. Months later Sarah finally crossed into a free state. For the first time in her life. No chains. No overseers. No auction blocks. She fell to her knees and cried. Not because the journey was over, but because she realized something extraordinary. Freedom had a sound. It was silence. No whips. No screams. Only the wind. Many people would have chosen to disappear forever. Sarah chose something different. She became a teacher. She taught children who had escaped slavery. She taught them to read. She taught them history. She taught them songs her grandmother had once whispered beside a tiny candle. Years later, as America moved closer toward civil war, Sarah quietly helped guide dozens of enslaved families toward freedom. She never carried a weapon. She carried courage. She carried stories. She carried hope. One little girl once asked her, "Were you always this brave?" Sarah smiled gently. "No, I was simply more afraid of giving up than I was of moving forward. Decades later, after slavery was finally abolished in the United States, Sarah stood outside a small schoolhouse filled with laughing children. Black children, children learning openly, children reading books without fear. She closed her eyes. She imagined her grandmother smiling. Our history did not begin in slavery. Those words had crossed generations, and now they belong to the future. Today, countless names of ordinary men and women have been lost to history. They left behind no monuments, no famous portraits, no statues, but they carried something greater than stone. They carried hope through unimaginable darkness. Because freedom was never given willingly. It was pursued with courage, protected through sacrifice, and remembered through stories. Every voice matters. Every forgotten life matters. Every act of courage shapes history. This was not just Sarah's story. It was the story of thousands whose names were never written in history books, yet whose strength helped transform America forever. And perhaps, the greatest victory of all, was that despite every attempt to erase them, their story survived.